Welcome to the Divine Lifestyles Podcast. I'm your host, Tara Magalski. Together with my guest experts, I cover topics ranging from cutting-edge healing modalities to hormonal harmony, to nutrition and plant medicine, to mindfulness and spirituality. My goal is to educate and inspire so you can create your own divine lifestyle. It's time to dive inward, rewire your brain, and heal from the inside out. Hey, beautiful soul fam. Please join Divine Lifestyles for a transformative and empowering women's healing retreat, October 16th through 22nd in Mexico. It's going to be a 6-night, 7-day experience that is designed to uplift your spirit, help you transcend trauma, and lead you towards a life of a renewed freedom and empowerment. Nestled in a serene and tranquil oasis, this amazing property in Cien Can provides the perfect sanctuary for you to nurture your body and embark on a journey of self-discovery, renewal, and of course, rejuvenation. Learn more at divinelifestyles.com/transcendence. Welcome to the Divine Lifestyles Podcast. I am your host, Tara Magalski, and today I am joined by a dear friend, Doug Akin. Doug is a creative visionary, an adventurous spirit, and I'd love to call him my blue-eyed fairy. He has such an amazing background. We're going to dive deeper into it, but just to give you a quick overview, he joined forces right out of college and created one of the first social media agencies in the US, working with Fortune 500 brands to reach millennials. And the agency was called Mr. Youth, and it received great recognition for its innovation and creativity, and then was later sold to a major media company. He has opened up restaurants, hip restaurants in the Village. He has done promotions when he was in college and before he was even in his 20s, running around the streets of New York City, bringing people together. And Doug has had such a wide array of success in his career. But after, achieving all of this success, Doug really felt like he was seeking more meaning and purpose into his life. And he was exploring his spiritual path, which we're going to dive into a little bit later. And he traveled the world for many years. I can't wait for you to tell us all those stories, and studied indigenous cultures and really eco-friendly ways to actually sustainable ways to live and be in the world. And then 2 years ago, he found and fell in love with water healing, which is a modality that offers deep somatic journeys and mimics the experience of being in the womb. Doug, I can't wait for you to tell us a little bit about all the various healers and shamanic arts and wisdom schools that you've trained in. But ultimately, Dougie is here on a mission to work with entrepreneurs and mission-driven leaders to achieve greater alignment and results in their lives. And Doug and I had the pleasure of meeting in 2012, I believe, in Tulum at the Nuno Astro Lodge. And we, that was really the beginning of our love story of how we've met each other. And we've been on this path together ever since. So thank you so much, Doug, for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's so beautiful.
Yes. So listen, Doug, there's so much that we can just riff on, but I want to hear a little bit more about, just give me a synopsis. Like, you grew up in the city, you ran the streets of New York City. We know this. We were in the club business in our early 20s. And then, what led you to the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, so great question. I think it's been an evolution. I feel like everybody has their own version of the hero's journey, where you get a call to adventure, and then there's that resistance, and then you ultimately, if you choose to pick up the call, embark on the journey. So and then after many trials and tribulations, you go through, you want to share something, you want to offer something new. And so I feel like just seeing where people are at and seeing, I think health and wellness is something that when we grew up was was discussed, but it didn't have the depth, right? There wasn't the range of options of spiritual exploration, and I think um, one just started from curiosity, like what else is out there in the world, you know? I mean, a lot of people think New York's the center of the world, and I definitely thought that. And I think growing up in the city is an interesting thing because a lot of people come to New York to achieve their dreams. So actually, in many ways, I think it is a really spiritual place. Um, and then I just wanted to see what else was out there. So, you know, I think through my own journey, I have a better understanding of maybe what other people are going through and sort of the cultural meme of like success of like, well, work hard, achievement, and then you sacrifice your relationships, your health, your well-being. You don't even really know who you are. You've just assumed an identity. And then there's like, who could you be? Who do you get to be? How do you get to do it? Can it look differently? Can it be unique to you? So yeah, so just going through those explorations myself, you know, first and foremost.
Yeah. You know, it's so interesting, and we'll talk about that because it's like, well, let's talk about it now. Like,
Yeah.
what is success, right? What defines success? And just like you, I was in the city 18 years, my early 20s and in my 30s and then late 30s and I was like, wow, I'm just going to keep going and like what am I doing? Like what am I actually doing? Am I just trying to climb up the corporate ladder? And much like you, I went on this journey of just self exploration. Like, what is it actually that I'm here to do? What is it that I'm here to bring forth in this lifetime? What is my soul's journey? You know? So, so tell me a little bit about what you think. What does success mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I love etymology, and one of the words that I have dug into is wealth. And wealth comes from your wealth is your health. So like wealth comes from well-being, which actually came from the word wheel. And a wheel has spokes. So it's like when all the spokes are working, the wheel turns and it works. But a lot of people will have a lot of, you know, financial success or career achievement, but they'll have really poor health or really poor relationships, or they won't love themselves, or they might not eat healthy, or they might have other bad habits, right? So is that a holistic way, a whole way of looking at success? So I think success is balance. I think it's up to the person, right, to define it. But it's, to me, it's like being in joy, being in harmony, not rejecting something, not resisting something, um, going after what you want, um, looking at your life, like seeing where things are coming up to show you as messengers, you know. I was even like reflecting on this idea of like shame, and like shame being this, like anything, any emotion being a beautiful messenger. It's like, what is it here to tell us? But we so often like push everything down and repress it, that it's like, wow, actually the alchemy is in the discovery and exploration of it, if we give ourselves the courage to actually feel that that's okay, and not even okay, but it's a gift that's showing up at our doorstep. But we always we're like, no, I don't want that, you know, that doesn't seem fun, right? Like pain doesn't seem like a fun gift, you know.
Yeah, I always say our traumas are our teachers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the lessons come usually through the darkness
Yeah, and I think
or the
like
dense times. You know.
success, you know, a lot of times people that I see like in the Western world have a lot, but they're not necessarily like happy or fulfilled. So I think it's like looking at like at a deeper level of like fulfillment, and just a feeling rather than like a name or a status or a title, you know.
Did you have like let's say a catalyst moment, you know, that kind of got you on the trajectory of the past 13 years? Was there like a moment, like for me, it was my mother's death.
Yeah.
And then I started asking the bigger questions. And then it was like I was working and I was super, like I was working with the NFL. I did Super Bowl 51. I was like the height of my career and I was feeling really empty inside and I was feeling really out of alignment. But I had made the money that I wanted to make, and I had, let's say, the quote unquote clout in the industry as like an event producer. And I thought, like, oh, this is it. And I had like an ulcer and I was getting sick, and like
Mhm.
my relationship wasn't, I was just engaged with Michael and things weren't working. And he was like, and I was like, wow, like this is clearly the wrong direction for me. I need to pivot.
Hmm.
Did you have something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, in 2010, I had sort of achieved these benchmarks. Like, I wanted to be a millionaire by the time I was 30. And then, like, when I was 30, it's like this large sum of money came in. And it was like, whoa, okay. And I was, getting press. And, it was all the things that I thought maybe would be exciting. But then when I got there, it sort of felt empty. And I was around a new wave of entrepreneurs through this community summit. And a lot of them were younger than me, and they were talking about having a purpose and changing the world. And I was like, oh my God, my clients are like, these large CPG brands, like, beverages and candies and things like that. And it was exciting at first, but I was sort of like, what's my purpose? Oh my God, I never thought about that. And I think the moment that I started to explore that, so just I started going in different directions than a lot of my friends, who were super hardcore New Yorkers, which is beautiful. And there's a lot of fun in that. And I started going to festivals, and I went to Burning Man, and I was like, oh my God, there's a world outside of the one I know. And I had an inkling of that, but I just never, it's like you don't know until you know. And so the moment I opened that door, it was like, oh my God, there's alternatives, and that felt exciting. And I just wanted to explore that. And I think this concept of purpose was something that was sort of pulling at me, like, well, what is your purpose? Like, well, I never even thought of that word. Now that I think about it, it's like, where do you even how do you find your purpose? Where do you go to find your purpose? I had no idea. No one was, there wasn't like a roadmap.
Well, that's what's so cool about like the work that I'm doing now, is because I feel like there is a little bit of a roadmap. We can create that path for
Yeah.
people. I think just by having this conversation and showing up and saying, look, I tried all these really neat things and I went exploring. And
Mhm.
ultimately, I think it comes down to really being quiet,
Hmm.
shutting down the noise that's outside you and really looking within. And whatever that is for someone, if that's going to a beach and spending, doing a silent retreat, or whatever that is, a medicine ceremony, yada, yada, yada. There's so many different ways to kind of get that silence to where you are really returning back to your truest self and quieting the noise and being able to listen. And I have to say, you have been such an amazing inspiration
Yeah.
just for me too, like watching you just be a full expression of yourself
Hmm.
and travel the world. And you talk a lot about, rewriting your story,
Hmm.
and you talk a lot about like boldness and claiming this version of yourself. So I want you to kind of talk about that, because I've been able to witness it. But for the people who are listening, like you've traveled the world, you've gone, and done all the things. So for someone who's listening,
Hmm.
what would be some advice that you would share with them about rewriting your story and claiming this like bold new version of
Hmm.
yourself?
Great. Beautiful. So yeah, I think one is courage, is having, courage. The word courage comes from the heart. So it's like having the courage and the heart to first explore what you want to explore, with maybe not even knowing where it's going to go. Like, I think the part of it is like surrendering. Like, I never even, it wasn't like I consciously thought about water healing. It showed up, and I felt it, and I was ready, and I took action from that place, of sort of letting God or letting spirit take over, and not trying to figure it all out. I think the mind can be such a trap to try to figure everything out, and then it prevents you from action. So I think for somebody, and another thought I had recently is like how you show up. So like most people, they don't know your fears, your limitations, your doubts. They might see something like that, but if your energetic expression has a choice, like I could be like this, right? If I went to an event and sort of be like somber, or I can be like this, and it's going to change my frequency, how people experience me, and how I experience myself. So I think at any moment, you know, there really only is the present moment. So we can choose to claim in any moment, like I'm choosing to be a loving, kind person. And to just start letting that have ripple and see like, well, what does that look like? Like for me, I was in Mexico recently and I started realizing I had so many interactions with people, and most people don't even ask someone what their name is. Like if they're a server, if they're at a store, if they're getting a taxi, whatever the interaction is, right? If they're at a bank, maybe not everybody's at a bank, but you get the point, right? Like a, interaction. And I was like, okay, I'm going to ask every person I come into contact with what their name is. Just because I don't have any expectation, just because it feels good to me. And then I got back to New York and I carried it out and I was like, I want to be that person. I want to be the person. I'm not looking for anything. I don't need any validation from it, but I want to be a person that's going to just sit and acknowledge somebody else. And my friend and I would do that where we'd ask people with this gratitude bus project that we have, we'd say,
Yeah.
what's your dream? And most people would be like, oh my God, you care about me? Like I'm like, whoa, like it's such a confronting question that most people don't think about, but also just like a moment of like, I'm not living individualistically. I'm thinking of things beyond me. And what is the sphere of influence we can create when we start sort of getting out of the mundane, we drop into the present and we have the courage. I went from having like a really, really big high in a career to sort of silence. Like it was like, I was getting paid a lot of money to show up and come up with these ideas for these brands, but then I didn't believe in them anymore. And it was like, oh my God, like, where's my voice? Where's my purpose? Where's my space to play? How do I get back into that thing? And I think I had a lot of personal questioning of like my own creativity and my own gifts. And that sort of mental blockage can be really damaging to the soul. And I think it's good to get reflections from friends. It's good to work with coaches. It's good to have somatic type experiences that are outside of the mind body. Where you're like, oh my God, I'm so much greater than my thoughts. I'm so much greater than this limited story. And if you say, okay, wait, I created the limited story, so why don't I create a more exciting story? And I think for travel, for me, I guess, I sort of realized like, mo- it's a gift, and it took me a bit to realize that like, holy shit, I've traveled more in my life at 46 than most people probably will in their entirety of their lives. And and wow, like I got to do that. And so I think especially nowadays, like this was early. This was 2011 before people could work anywhere. Like now you can work anywhere. You can pick up skills way easier. There's social media there's so many ways if you want to travel or you want to do life differently or do it uniquely to you. Like I feel like the world is way more accepting of that. And it's like the things that you could be any gender, any dress, any way, like just claim it. Like I think there's a boldness in claiming how you want to live and sort of believing it before it's present. What do you call it?
Don't dim to fit in.
Yeah.
We just pulled this today, guys who are listening. It's like, how are you dimming your light in order to fit in? And you are the perfect example, Doug, of like your uniqueness. Like there is no other Dougie out there.
Yeah.
And I feel like you fully have embodied that. And
Thank you.
it's like that was what I was like trying to say before is like I've really witnessed you over the years, seeing you in Tulum, when we were young and we were naked and running around Uno Astro Lodge and Temescals, and then you being your mom, being my neighbor, and then running to you on the streets and just really witnessing you really be authentic and stepping into who you are. So I just want to say like, I love you and I see you.
Oh, thank you.
And, you've been leading by example. But I want to talk a little bit about the gratitude bus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us about the gratitude bus because it's honestly one of my favorite things and projects that you're working on.
Cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So yeah, my friend and I had this really synchronistic experience, and we wound up actually leaving like at this. We were both 33 on the same day. We left our jobs, and wound up the universe brought us together on this sort of mission. And we didn't really. I mean, I had no idea. Like honestly, like we just. I know I wanted to travel the world, and he did, and we wound up going on a road trip in California, and we just were spreading joy. And I think in New York, I felt a little bit stifled. Like I was hugging people. This was like in 2011, and like people were like, "Well, what are you doing? Like, why would you do that?" And, in California, it was definitely more. I think there was a more openness and to that spirit, and we got a van and we lived out of a van for a month and a half, and I like had the best time of my life, and I was like, oh my god, like why don't people talk about this? And then I went to Burning Man, and we kept traveling after Burning Man, and just we kept the spirit going. Like most people went back to their jobs or their homes, and we didn't have those at the time, so we just kept burning, meaning like we just kept being that spirit. It's like you go to a festival and you're free and open, and then you go home and you sort of go back to normal life. And we just made that our normal life and realized that people were so hungry for it. And we started just asking people, were like, you guys are living the dream. And we're like, are we? Like, okay. It wasn't like a preemptive thing. And so we started asking people like, well, what's your dream? Why don't you come in and sit down on a couch and talk to us? It's an Airstream vehicle, so it mimics like a classic sort of 80s motorhome, sort of you know I don't know the word, like
It's the best. It's the fucking best.
cheap chic. I don't know the word, hillbilly chic or something. Uh, and upscale and upscale hillbilly, and like you know the actually it's funny, it was called, the before we got it, it said hillbilly heaven on the outside, so that's why I referenced that word. uh, but yeah, and so we started just driving it and spreading joy and inviting people and bringing community together just through seeing everybody as equals. And I think often we sort of live in a bubble, right? We hang out with people the same socioeconomic status or the same work class, and this really was giving us a chance, like we were just a magnet, and people were coming from all classes, all walks of life, and there was just curiosity. And so we were bringing together like homeless people and successful people and everyone. Um, and we then met an artist named Peter Tunney, and he's like, I love what you guys are doing. I want to wrap with gratitude. So that became sort of a signal and a message to, and just really a reminder. Like we were literally living inside a bus that was wrapped in gratitude. So it was pretty constant reminder of like, are we grateful? Are we grateful? Can we constantly surrender to the universe? Like, are good things going to just sort of happen if we let them? And I think grateful for everything, right? Like grateful for the really hard, tough times, and the challenges, and grateful for the fact that we have a roof over our head, we can eat, we can we have a lot of friendships. I mean, I feel like when I traveled to Africa, I really had a moment where I was like, oh my God, like hot water is on demand is a blessing. I was living in this village, and like people were heating up hot water. It took like an hour to take like a 3-minute bucket shower with warm water. And we overlook that. So, I think yeah, just being on the road, living simply, and also really like high vibration was a great reminder to just be grateful for, everyday life and the adventure that each day can bring to us.
I love that. I actually went to Africa as well, and with the organization Epic many years ago, and we built water wells, and we had to do the whole walking for water. And I mean, just to get water that wasn't even clean water, you have to walk hours and then come back and boil the water. I mean, and then here we are in the States, and there's plastic water bottles at every convenience store. So traveling is such a beautiful way to remind us of what is really important, and and how blessed we are, really, really.
Oh.
So where is the bus? Where is the bus now?
The bus just got an overhaul. It's outside of New York City. So yeah, we'll have it in New York City soon.
Yes, it was so amazing to be on the bus with you like a couple months ago. And I'm so excited. I really think that there is like a gratitude tour coming with that bus.
Thank
So let's do it. Let's do
you.
it. Can you bring it to Mexico? Can we get that bus to Mexico?
For that. Yeah. And we've been doing, I mean, a lot of like I do a lot of work with homeless, feeding homeless. And so that's something that we've, been passionate about as well as spreading that abundance to people that really need it. And just, you know, I think a lot of it is our relationship to time and do we have enough time to be able to do something like that, right? To be giving, to be generous, to be considerate with somebody else, to listen to somebody else, and yeah, I think a lot of it's just like how are we relating to the world, right? Like how do we show up? How do we relate? What are we, what are we choosing? Um, what are we present to? All those kind of inquiries.
So if somebody who's listening now, like myself, I told you I want to come down and help you any way I can with any volunteer efforts. But if anybody's interested in learning more about the gratitude bus, is the best way through Instagram?
Yeah, they can just send me a message on Instagram. Yeah.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Well, this is a perfect time to shift into some mental health. So let's talk a little bit about like the importance of mental health. Can you share some pattern interrupts? Like you talk a lot about, you have a lot of like skills and techniques. Like what are some ways that you shift your mood really easily?
Well, I think movement is such an amazing medicine. So, I really like to move and sweat, and I've learned a lot through the water, like with the water as medicine, like sweating, or being in a body of water like a bathtub is really healing, or running. I mean, some of this we sort of overlook it, but we're moving, water brings up emotion. So like if we're sweating and we're moving our emotion through that, crying as well.
Mhm.
So
It's
yeah,
the biggest purification, the
exactly.
biggest purification.
So I like to do that. I mean, meditation, even something as basic as like just putting your hands on your heart and your belly just feels really nurturing, and giving yourself that opportunity to feel held, I think is really powerful. A lot of people outsource their well-being. I had a friend and she's like, "Oh, I have a headache and I just went and got a massage," and that's great. I mean, it's great to have someone put your hands on you, but even like just just getting in your head and opening up, like your when you have a headache, it's because you have excess heat in your head. So you can like pull it out by like moving the energy, in your head, and pulling it upwards and out, and even like pulling your hair up. So those are like little hacks.
Tell us a little bit about your daily practice.
Okay, I wake up and I meditate. I journal, and right now I'm doing declarations. So I write out every day who I'm declaring myself to be in every aspect of my life. So it's like finance, fulfillment, family, faith, and there's adventure. There's about 8 categories, and I write that out. So I'm essentially in like creating myself, through the active process of writing and thinking, and thoughts become patterns. So I'm reminding myself of who I get to be and who I get to show up as, um, in those places of life. Um,
Oh, I love that.
yeah.
I've got an exciting offer for all of my listeners. The free Divine Daily Practices video series. Get simple practices to release anxious thoughts, sharpen your intuition, and rewire your nervous system in less than 10 minutes a day. Come on over to my website at divinelifestyles.com/divine daily practices. And over the next week, you'll receive a complimentary self-care system to drop into your authentic self and activate your divine intuitive wisdom. I hope you enjoy. Because I do like my sadhanas with chanting, but I'm starting to write a book. So I have like sticky notes everywhere. And what I'm trying, well, the process that I'm in right now is called the sticky note method, where you put everything up, all the topics that are you after your meditation, like what is channeling through you that you feel like you want to write. And you put all the sticky notes up there. And then each day, whatever one is like calling to the most, then you go and you sit down and you write and you give yourself 30 minutes minimum. If you can go longer, great. But I have to add this in the declaration.
Yeah, it's great.
That's a beautiful practice.
Yeah. So it's like in the space of like creating yourself anew. And
Mhm.
so that, I mean, I've been reading a lot, different books that can sort of rewire your consciousness and your brain. I just started reading The Fifth Agreement. That's a great book. I highly recommend it. And I mean, I love water. Like, I don't have a bathtub right now, but I love doing a practice where I basically float in the bathtub and I put my head back and I have a floating pillow, but if you have a prop, and then I'll literally just hum to myself, like chant or hum, and then the vibration circles, and it feels just like you're in an echo chamber. And it can like feel like you're in the womb, or just feel like you're in this sort of cocoon of your own sound. So I love that. Like I mean, and chanting and is the same sort of thing, right? That you're letting your vibration be expressed through that. I do sometimes if I'm feeling like a lot of anger rising, like a lot of heat, I'll do emotional release techniques where like you can yell into a pillow or you can just hit a pillow. I mean, you just moving the energy is really the key. So um, just letting it out. And I think that's something also in our society around anger and grief, we hold it in, and most indigenous cultures have methods of, through primal screaming or through collective grieving. With a lot of the cultures I've studied in Africa, those are really fundamental parts of ritual and of life and expression. And I think we repress a lot of that, in our culture. We don't have spaces for it.
It's crazy. And this keeps coming up for me is like when it comes to like any somatic trauma work, when you look at what goes on in nature with animals, right? This is the simplest way I can explain it. It's like when an animal gets scared and their nervous system is frightened, right? And they're like fight or flight,
Mhm.
they'll go into it, but then they'll shake it off. And it's like, but why as humans do we not do that? We really can learn a lot by looking at animals in nature. Instead, we get into a situation where our cortisol levels, we go into fight or flight, we get all tense, and then we just shelf it, walk away, get back into our computer, get back scrolling online, and that energy gets really stuck.
Mhm.
So, I just think it's so important that like we have to move this energy. So, talk to me as I'm doing my somatic shaking. Talk to me a little bit about your water therapy and that as a modality and how that's moving energy because I've done it before and it's very emotional.
Yeah. So it's great. And I just watched an amazing talk by this brain scientist, and he sort of articulated at a scientific level a lot of things that I feel and experience with people. So I'm holding someone in the water, and ultimately it's a ritual around letting go. So I work with a lot of people who are in transition stages of career, life, relationship, processing a loved one, a death. And we're always in rebirthing cycles, right? So water is a really important part of that. In different cultures like Judaism, there's the mikvah. In Catholicism, water is obviously, very key. And in sweat lodges in Native American cultures, it's very prominent. So every culture has Indonesia. They work with water blessings. So the
Yeah.
ultimate idea is that when you hold someone in a body of water, there's an invitation for them to let all this stuck dormant emotion and energy move. And the water can become a conductor to allow that energy to move and alchemize. And so since we are majority water, we come from the womb, which is the water, and we're completely surrounded by water, there's a lot of wisdom the water holds and a lot of memory the water holds. So and ultimately we are water, so we're programmable. So we're holding on to sort of an old, outdated program. And if we can actually surrender that, and then the ultimate goal is to become one like water, to fuse with water. And you say like, well, why would you want to become like water? Well, water is flow, right? Water is ease, but water is also strong. It's directed. It knows where it's going. Like if you look at a river, it's smooth and it has direction. It knows the end place it wants to go. It ends up, the end of the river, usually meets the sea. And water also moves around obstacles. It doesn't get stuck by an obstacle. So if you have a boulder or a big rock in a river, the water will move around it and even move through it, versus getting defeated or withdrawn from the, you're getting exhausted because you're going up against a barrier consistently instead of around it. So yeah, it's ultimately a dance, but the ability to become one with the water is so powerful because you get out of your mind. And we're so in our minds and in our sight. And when we shut down the sight, which you can do through meditation, but I think there's a different element at play when you have someone in the water that you can really go deeper. Like my friend does TM, and he's like, wow, like I can just drop in with the water so much quicker because there is a living element and I can relax. And so the scientist was explaining how the brain, the spine is the tail of the brain. And so our brains are constantly being overtaxed, stimulated. And then our spine is actually the residual effect of that. So when you put somebody in the water, they can fully let their spine release. And it's so amazing. And you totally lose time and space reality. And you can like leave your body. Some people go back into feeling like they were in the womb. I'm chanting in the process, so people feel very nurtured. They feel like they're being sung to in the womb. It's really wild, the effects of it. And then when people finally come out and emerge from the water, it's this like rebirth or renewal feeling. Yeah.
Yes, it's so beautiful.
Thank you.
So beautiful. So, what would be the best piece of advice or the most insightful piece of advice that you have ever received?
Wow. That's a great question.
Don't overthink it,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I think just to try new things out, just to explore and to be myself, to just be true to myself and to explore what feels good for me. Like my definition of success doesn't have to look like other people, so it's more about my own relationship to who I am, right? And most people aren't even probably thinking about you, so it's like we think about ourselves so much, but it's like probably people aren't even thinking about us. So why overthink so much of what others think or what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing, right?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, they're probably really not thinking about you, they're just thinking about themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what can you share just to wrap it all up? If someone's listening who's really struggling, they're at whatever point they are in their life and they're really just struggling to find out what their purpose is, what they feel that they're called to do in this world. I always like to say they know that they're born to do something more, and it's like, how can they achieve their divine lifestyle? What would be your advice to someone who's listening?
It's a great question. I think, take the first step, like start little by little. And if it's starting as a passion, if you're working and you have someone paying you for your work, that's a great place to start. You don't have like the pressure. So I think just take the steps, like go if you want to go on a retreat and you want to learn something. Like I think the fear is so gripping that that's what prevents action. So we're so afraid, the fear of like, what if it doesn't work? What if I lose my friends? What if it's weird? Like that, it just like if I went back, I would have done way more stuff. Just been like, when I was in 2011, I was like, I want to train to become a shaman, and like all my friends were like, you're crazy. And now it's like, you know, ayahuasca and shamanism has become so much more in the mainstream. So it's like I think what you said earlier, it's like if you feel something within yourself that you want to discover, that's a huge gift. Like that's in itself, a lot of people don't have that. So if you've been given that, it's like God coming in. And there's a, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. She's like,
Love.
if you get a message and you don't take it, that will go to someone else. Like if it's like, hey, here's a great idea and you miss it. So I think just like take shots. We in a lot of other cultures, like in Germany and a lot of other cultures, failure is a really important ingredient to success. And we sort of have this really weird relationship with failure. Like no one wants to really talk about it. But, you know, a lot of people fail in order to get to their way of success. So like just keep trying, keep exploring. If you feel called or drawn to something, go for it. Like just say yes to it, and all the mental anguish and exhaustion of thinking your way out of it or why you shouldn't do it it's gonna deteriorate that muscle of intuition and trust within yourself and the channel that's you're relating to outside of yourself, so.
So that book really changed my life.
Oh, nice.
Big Magic. I had started my company already because I got in the download in 2008 and I'd gotten the, divine download. And then I was like, oh my God, somebody else will do it. Like what exactly you just said is what I was like, oh, well, I can't have that. So I was like trademarking and I was like, okay, I'm all in. I'm all in. So that book really, really, really led me to continuing to figure out because once I was given the download of Divine Lifestyles in 2008, I had no idea what it meant.
Oh.
And it's taken me, 17, 18 years of like embodying different healing modalities and different things. And really it all comes down to one simple thing.
Hmm.
I am living divinely spirit led.
Exactly.
Like divine lifestyles to me is living 100% in alignment with my soul's cosmic blueprint, why I was created in this world, but led by spirit.
Yeah. And that's such an interesting thing too. Like, this idea of surrender. And that's like what I've learned in the water. It's like, and I'm constantly surrendering to the elements, surrendering to somebody cancels, everything. It's like, okay, like surrender, like it wasn't meant to be. That wasn't the frequency that was meant to show up right now. Like what else? I think we get so disappointed and let down by something that then that actually prevents us from the miracle of what that moment is available. It's like, oh my God, like, you know, I was supposed to meet someone for lunch and they never showed up. And like, what is this opportunity presenting to itself now? But instead, it's like, if you get upset and you get withdrawn and you feel defeated, then you're not going to be in the magic of finding out what that moment was for you to discover, like you got fired or like whatever the thing was, right? It's like if you could see it as a gift. And I love what you're saying, like also this idea of letting go and letting God in. It's like we have this idea we're in control, but are we really? Do we really know what's going on? And I think it's way more joyous to sort of be in that exploration, like take action, but also not be so attached. I was just talking to a friend about identity, and it's like, he's like, oh, all my identity was like in this project. And it's like, but that's not who you are. Like, I'm like, that's not how I experience you. I experience you as a soul. And what's a soul? Like a soul is infinite. A soul is like way beyond like a project or a title or like, it's infinite. And so I think we're sort of in this playing small field because we've sort of forgotten who we are. We've forgotten our magnificence and our capacity. So we're like, we've sort of, minimized it, to such a degree.
I love that. Just speaking about identity, because gosh, the ego loves to just grab on like, you know, oh, I've worked here or this. I mean, I did it for years. And then during COVID, I was like, what does this even all mean? You know, COVID was one of those times where I just spent a lot of time going, is this what I really want? I was working at Goldman Sachs at the time. I had my business on the side. I was like, no, I want to go all in. Like, this isn't just a passion project anymore. This isn't just a podcast. This isn't just,
Yeah.
this is like actually my life's work. Now is the time for me to show up and claim it. Um, so yeah, I mean, I was so identified and it's tricky. Our egos can be so tricky, right? And I always have to check myself. Like, why am I doing this? right? Like, perfect example of what we were just talking about yesterday. I was like, really not feeling 100%. I don't know what it is. My body's telling me I need to rest, I need to nourish. My cards told me that too. And, I'm like, oh, I don't want to let anyone down, right? I don't want to let Doug down. Like, he's taking time out of his schedule. And you were so gracious. I was like, do you think we can move it to tomorrow? And I literally sat there and I meditated and I said, because I was feeling bad and frustrated with myself for not showing up. And I was like, no, maybe this is just a beautiful message to show up better tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. And you were so beautiful with your response. You're like, of course, rest. And then I really was feeling into it. And I was like, this is just the angels saying that you're just going to be able to riff and just like have much more presence tomorrow and you'll be able to serve better. And, let yourself off the hook.
Yeah. And that it's such an interesting thing because what I was sort of saying about with the water, like being in the flow, it's been such a great teacher for me. And I think I have lived in flow, but really going from someone that is doing it without even knowing to doing it, but understanding sort of the depth of it, where there's moments where it's like it's raining out, and there's certain things that are, especially in like, traditional cultures where you have to surrender to the environment. You have to surrender, to the sort of larger spirits at play. And even in Mayan culture, like in Tulum, I remember we were at Uno. It's like there's days for planting, there's days for your, sowing your seeds, like all these different sort of ways of navigating through life. And I think sometimes we try to go against it, and that's not serving us or others. So I love what you said, where you're like, hey, I want to rest so I could show up better for you and be in service to more people, right? By taking care of myself first and foremost.
Yeah.
And I think that's really beautiful. And it's sort of what we were saying as well about just the dance of life. Like, can we meet things with ease and grace? Can we meet challenge and conflict? I'm reading this book. It's really great, and we could drop it in the show notes. And it was like, when you're with your partner, sometimes someone might see something in them that you've overlooked,
Yeah.
but they'll compliment, oh, I love your teeth, or I love your eyes, and then you've overlooked that in your partner, but someone else sees it. And we're sort of saying, can you meet every opportunity anew? And I really love that. Like, can you be in such a present moment where, like, where you would react to something, you can catch yourself and actually be like, no, you know what? Like, I'm gonna play with this differently. I'm gonna dance with this differently. Like, I'm not just gonna do the same. Like, if I'm getting passed the ball by the universe, it's like I'm going to do the same shot and I'm going to miss and get angry. Maybe I'll try a different way. And I think there's such a beautiful alchemy and art to that, of like, wow, how do we get to dance with life? And like, can we catch ourselves in moments where like there's an opportunity to respond differently?
Yeah. Well, this is a perfect time to chat a little bit about what you're saying, like the theme, the power of choosing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in those moments, you have the power to choose how you want to respond.
Exactly.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about what
Yeah.
that means to you? Because I know it was a theme. You're like, this is coming through.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. Like, I'll give a anecdotal experience. So I was, in New York, and I've spent the last, I don't even remember, like 7 or 8 winters in Costa Rica and Mexico. The other day, it was really gloomy in New York, and I've spent the last many years winters in very warm weather, tropical places. So it was definitely an adjustment for me. And I was noticing, I will my mind started having a thought loop, like a negative thought loop, and I was just like sort of feeling down and gloomy, and just sort of like, why am I in the city? And the weather's crappy and I want to be somewhere warm. And then I was like, you know what? I called myself and I was like, wait a minute. I get to choose. I get to, like, I can be joyous, like I get to choose. I'm in control. Like, I literally have the controller to my life, and I get to choose that. And I think sometimes people go through their whole life and they just accept they're grumpy or they're whatever, and they don't shift that energy. And so, it was like a really big moment where it's like so simple but profound, where I'm like, wait a minute, I'm just choosing to be in a shitty mood, and I could choose to be in a good mood, and I just move that frequency. And I was like, now I'm happy. And, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be drops, but even like yesterday, it was raining out and I was at the farmer's market, which does make me happy. And most people were in a pretty like somber mood. And I was like, hey, like, how's your day? It's amazing, right? Like, we're all wet, like, great. And just sort of like, yeah, just choosing, like, choosing how you want to show up. And I think a lot of times, I'll include myself, like, don't think about intention. It's like you go to a party, it's like, how do you want to show up? Like, what kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be a person, and I think the more we can do that, then it's like we're in the driver's seat. We're in the seat of authority. I was down in Tulum and I was feeling really good. And early I was at this party and I was like, I'm not really feeling it. And then I shifted the energy. I was like, I just want to go up and say hello to everybody. I just want to introduce myself. So just sort of like going up to people and like, hey, I'm Doug. What's your name? And instead of being like, oh, I don't know, do I know them? Waiting for the invitation. And I was just like, this is who I want to be. Like, I'm not going to overthink it. I don't have to be this all the time because I think that could be draining when you take an identity and you have to perform that all the time. But having an intention of like choosing, like, I want to show up like this, I want to play with this, I want to explore this. Maybe it's like your clothing, like you want to dress with more bright colors. Maybe you want to just you know like meet more people and be sweet to them. And so yeah, so it's the power of choosing, of who you're being, who you get to be, who you want to be, and noticing when you're not being that, and allowing yourself to have taking the power back.
Mm-hmm. So good. So good because I have to do the same. You know, I'm here in New York. I like to be in Mexico for the winters, right? You and me, we're usually in Tulum around this time, cute somewhere. And I'm like, that's okay. I'm here in New York and it's all going to be great. And I'm going to choose to enjoy this beautiful sun that came through the window this morning. Before I jumped on with you, I was like basking in the sunlight that was coming through the window going, this feels amazing. So I can choose if I want to have a shitty day. I can choose if I want to go down a negative thought loop, or I can choose to just stay in a high vibration and also, it's easy to say that, right? But I always tell people who are listening, like, surround yourself with community, with people, with listening to high vibe podcasts, reading great books, and surrounding yourself with people and tools and resources that are going to support you to sustain that higher frequency. Check
Yeah.
out the divine daily practices. I'll have that looped in the show notes.
Okay.
And then my last question for you, Dougie, is what makes you come alive?
That's a great question. I mean, I think people. I think being around people and sharing the things that I love, and openness, people that are open and receptive and curious, and seeing me and others for the beautiful gifts that we all are. Um, Food, like organic fruits. I love sharing food and offering fruits and educating people about fruits they might not know about, like tropical fruits, and places around the world that I've traveled, and indigenous wisdom and cultures. And yeah, I think just being in the mix of life with others that have an openness, and receptivity.
Doug, I see this. I see you having a show. And that's what I told you. I was like, we need to get like a production team around you because I see you having this show where you're doing all your fun Dougieisms. And I really feel like it just needs to be filmed. So if you want, I can just follow you around and film you.
That's it. Yeah.
Because I feel that there is a real show. And I think there's a show. I think this is your YouTube show. Guys, we're manifesting this right now, real time, where you're going around and you're talking about food and culture and educating about eco-friendly, sustainable farming and like all of the things that you love. And it's like a fun bit where you're at these farmer markets all over the world.
Like interacting with people, like like a cab driver. I find there's so many synchronicities. It's like the sort of unspoken language. It's like what is there to discover when you ask someone their name and then you're like, oh, that's my brother's name, and it makes you feel uplifted by that interaction, like. And I love like Uber drivers and cab drivers. And I was talking to a guy the other night. He was driving me home, and I was like, what's your name? And then I like asking them what their name actually means, because I do believe that there's a divine sort of destiny within person's name. And a lot of indigenous groups believe that your name is your birthright. And he said like, I forgot, honesty or trust. It was sort of like, I think he was from the Middle East. I forgot exactly what it meant. And then I was like, oh, are you that? Or it was like wise. And I was like, are you that? And he's like, I like to think so. And sometimes I am. He's a little older than me. And then I was like, well, what's something wise you could share with me? And he said that he never takes, like if something's left in the cab, like he said, a woman left like a big amount of money, like several thousands of dollars, and he like returned it to her. And he's like, I would never take what's not mine. And I thought, wow, that's like really beautiful and simple. But just somebody, we don't often, I think it's like I have this metaphor, it's like when you turn over a rock, like remember when you're a kid and you turn a rock and you'd see a worm? It's like when you turn a rock over, you see life. Like you activate life force and see life force in real time. And it's like that kid discovering the worm. And it's like, I think when we turn over that rock, we're like, oh, who are you? What's your name? Like, where are you from? Like, we start to be in a discovery mode with other people in the world. And then it's generative. It creates more life. It creates more connection. So I like that. That makes me come alive.
I love it. And where can people find you online, learn more about all of your work and your projects?
So Instagram is probably the best place. I am Doug Akin, Akin, and you can message me there. We have a handle for Gratitude Bus as well on Instagram. My website for my somatic water healing and coaching is awaken.life, and that's AWAKIN.life, like my last name, Akin. Yeah, and those are probably the best places.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your beautiful medicine of your soul. I love you so much.
Love you so much.
And I'll make sure everything is linked in the show notes.
Amazing. Thank you, love.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Divine Lifestyles Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you get your episodes. If you really loved this episode, screenshot it and share it on social media. It will help us to continue to make an impact. With gratitude and love always, keep illuminating your path.